Hello, welcome everybody to Discovery JJC. My name is Chef Tim Bucci. I'm one of the culinary arts instructors at Joliet Junior College. We have a fairly brand new facility that was opened in 2017 with a lot of the state-of-the-art equipment that you're going to see today in most restaurants and food service establishments. We have a culinary arts program, a baking and pastry program, and some of the best instructors at the college from around the nation. We have had instructors that have been on TV, on the Food Network. We've had instructors that have competed in the Culinary Olympics to represent the United States. I'm one of 68 master chefs in the United States, and there's only 4 in Illinois teaching at the college. One, that's me, teaching at the college. Today, I'm going to do a simple pork roast for you. I'm going to show you how to brown it, cook it to the right temperature, and also I'm going to show you how to make a gravy. This will be a great little dish that you can make for the holidays or any time. So first thing we're going to do is get started. We have a pork loin. This is a small piece. You can use a larger piece. I'm going to season this with some fresh black pepper and kosher salt. Now I have a pan heating up over here on about a medium heat. I'm going to add just a little bit of oil, and I also have a little bit of some pork fat that I trimmed off. So I want to try to utilize everything that's going to maximize the most amount of flavor. We still have plenty of openings for the spring semester in our classes, so it'd be great for you to come check us out. We have, like I said, we have a lot of hands-on classes, baking, culinary. We have 2 restaurants at the college. That gives you really good life experience as it was working in a restaurant or another food service establishment. So I want to try to get some really good color. I want to season this pork loin really good and evenly, okay? Now, not as much black pepper. I'm going to start with the fat side down. Now, I want some really beautiful color on this pork loin, okay? While that's browning, what I did for you, I started another pork roast, okay? Look at that beautiful color. That's what we're going to achieve here, okay? I actually put a little bit of rosemary and garlic on it towards the end of the cooking. Beautiful color all around, okay? Now, to check for doneness, what we would want to use is some kind of thermometer. This is an instant read thermometer. You can get these for, $4 or $5 at grocery stores or online. And we want to check the internal temperature of this pork roast. Now, I like to go right through the end instead of going straight down, because that's going to give you a misread of the internal temperature. I want to pull this for this pork roast. I want to pull this out of the oven at 130 degrees. That's going to be a beautiful pink inside. Now, if you want a little less pink, depending on who you're serving it to, you can go 135, because it's going to carry over and the temperature is going to rise out of the oven. Okay, so we're at like 132, which is fine. Okay, now I'm going to let this rest on a roasting rack at least for 10 minutes. You can even let it go for 15 minutes before you slice it. You want to let those juices distribute themselves throughout the product. Okay, so we're going to make our gravy. Now, throughout the cooking process, I added a little bit of water to the pan. Now, my roast was sitting on a bed of Mirepoix, which is a mixture of carrots, celery, onion, so it wasn't sitting directly on the bottom. And the reason I put a little bit of water, you can always use stock, chicken stock or chicken broth, is to keep the Mirepoix, those vegetables, from burning. I do want some really nice color on it. Now, with that being said, if you're going to add liquid to this, you want to make sure that before you add your flour that you reduce or evaporate any liquid that's in the pan. Okay, so we're getting some great color on this pork roast, but I want more color. Now, just keep an eye on your fat. So the fat's going to render and give off some extra fat. We're going to use that to make our roux, which is going to be our thickener for our gravy. Now, this is a true gravy, using the drippings and that fat to make our sauce. Okay? So, once we start to see that, there's no bubbles and liquid bouncing up, we're going to go ahead and add just a little bit of tomato product. Now, you don't have to add tomato product to your gravy. I like a little bit just for some flavor and for some color. Okay? Now, after that, we're going to go ahead and add our flour. And I'm going to go over the amounts of Mirepoix once I finish this one before it goes into the oven. Okay? So, we're going to add about a 1/4 cup of flour, which is going to make about 2 cups of roux. So, a 1/4 cup is about 1 ounce of flour, a little bit more. Now, if your pan looks very dry, you can always add a little bit of oil. You want to make sure that there's enough fat to coat that flour that's in your pan so we don't have any lumps. Okay? Alright, let's take a look at our pork roast. So that's kind of the color that I want to achieve right there. So we're going to turn that. We're going to let that go. Now, we added our tomato, about a tablespoon. We added our flour. We're going to deglaze the pan with about 6 ounces of white wine. Okay? Any of those caramelized bits from the meat is best. It's going to give you some really great flavor for your sauce, your gravy, okay? All right, now I have some homemade chicken broth, chicken stock. You can use a store-bought version. Just make sure you get like a low sodium or no sodium because you're going to let this cook down a little bit. You don't want that to get salty as it reduces and evaporates. These are some of the skills that you're going to be learning at the college. It's just very simple cooking techniques done very well. And that's what's going to make you successful in this industry. Whether you're learning how to do breads, muffins, cakes, puff pastry, making pot au choux for eclairs, or making sauces and learning how to saute and grill and roast, making even a mashed potato, which some people take for granted. We're going to teach you the correct way how to make these items. The simple techniques, those are going to carry you the farthest. Doing just really delicious food. People like to get a little bit ahead of themselves, trying to do some really fancy food, but a lot of times it falls short on flavor. So here, we are maximizing all the flavor we can from this pork roast into this gravy. Okay? That's what we focus on at the college. Teach you really good techniques that are going to make you successful at the school and beyond in your career. This is not rocket science. This is stuff that is done every day that makes people very happy with your cooking or with our cooking. Okay? So I added about half of that chicken stock. I wanted to make sure I didn't add it all at once. I wanted to make sure to incorporate it into my flour. And then we're going to add the rest. Sometimes if you add too much at once, you're going to get lumps in your sauce or gravy. So I got a really beautiful color here. I want to make sure I get up all those caramelized bits that fond on the bottom of the pan. Alright, so now, normally I may not do this in a saute pan. I may start it in a saute pan and then I might finish it in a saucepan. So now, we're getting some really great color here, okay? And you can see I got a lot of fat and drippings developing in the pan, and that's great. That's what we want. Okay, we want that fat. That's going to create our roux. Now, as far as our Mirepoix goes, I have about a half a cup of large chunks of onions, carrots, and some celery. Okay, just some large pieces so that they don't burn. I have a quarter cup of celery, a quarter cup of carrots, and we're going to make sure we brown this all around, okay? Now, you can see our gravy starting to come to a boil. I want to lower that to a simmer, all right? I need to grab a spoon. Now, you see that scum, that foam that's developing? As that's developing, give that a skim. We want to get that out of there. That's some of the impurities from the stock and vegetables, some protein that's rising and coagulating or cooking on the top. We want to get that out of there. We want to make sure we clean our sauce so that we have a really delicious flavor and great color. Okay, so that's what we're looking for in terms of color here. All right, I'm just going to set that roast aside. I'm going to add my Mirepoix. And then I have some rosemary stems that I have left. I have a little thyme sprig. If you have a little bay leaf, you can put a bay leaf in there as well. So what we're going to do, we're going to put that on top of that Mirepoix. Again, we don't want it sitting on the bottom of our pan. We're going to place it in a 325 degree oven. 350 is fine. We're going to turn it every like 10 minutes. And then if it starts to get a little brown on the bottom, you can add a little bit of water, a little bit of your broth. That's just going to keep the Mirepoix, those vegetables, from burning. And it's not going to hurt the roast because it's not sitting in the juices. If I didn't have that bed of Mirepoix, that vegetables on the bottom, I wouldn't add liquid because then our beautiful roast is going to start to simmer in those juices. Okay? Alright, so we have our gravy. Now we want to let this go for about at least 15 to 20 minutes to cook out that flour. But really it depends on flavor, okay? If it's too thick, I can always add a little bit more broth to it because I do want to let this cook to cook out that flour. If it's too thin, then we can evaporate some of that moisture and let it thicken up naturally. We've already added some flour. We don't need to add anything else at this point, okay? Now, what we're going to do, once this is done, we're going to strain that into a saucepan, okay? And we are going to add a little bit of butter, a little bit of lemon to this as well. Okay, so I have my gravy, and I have a saucepan, a little strainer. We will end up straining this in about 15 minutes. Again, we want to cook out that flour. We want to develop some really delicious flavor here with our sauce, our gravy. There's nothing wrong with calling it a gravy. It is what it is, right? I'm a big stickler on terminology, calling things what they really are and not trying to make up a name just to make it sound nice or fancy. If it's a gravy, it's a gravy. If it's a sauce, it's a sauce. Okay, so it's still thin, and that's fine because it's still going to evaporate and it's going to get thicker. Okay, I don't want to thicken it up too much in the beginning. I want to let it reduce and evaporate to develop some really good flavor and intensify those flavors. It's tasting really great already. Tastes like roast pork, and that's what we want. We used all those drippings from our pork, any extra fat that came off. I trimmed some of that fat. There was a little bit too much. I want to trim a little bit of that fat off so that, when you go to slice this, you don't have to trim any more. There's a little bit, but that's delicious. It's nice and crispy right now. I don't want to trim that fat off at this point because you're going to be trimming off flavor. Okay, so you want to trim it a little bit before. Now, You could do the same process, making a gravy, if this was a beef tenderloin or another kind of a roast, right? It's, again, we teach techniques. We don't just teach recipes, okay? So think of this as a beef tenderloin for Christmas. Think of it as a nice beef eye of the round roast if you don't want to buy beef tenderloin. Think of this as a pork tenderloin. Now, obviously, smaller the muscle, it's going to cook a lot faster. Beef tenderloin I would cook to 130 degrees so that you have a nice kind of medium rare medium after it rests. This could be rack of lamb. You can make a nice lamb gravy. Now with beef, I may use red wine instead of white wine. You can use other wines. You don't have to use wine. If you don't have wine, you can just deglaze with your chicken broth or beef broth if you're doing a sauce for beef. This could be, a gravy from a roast chicken or a roast turkey. Again, same process. The key is, after you take it out of the oven, you want to make sure that you evaporate any moisture that's in the pan. That process is called clarifying the fat. Okay, so if I add my flour to that pan that has fat and moisture, when I add that flour, I'm going to get lumps. And that's why people get lumpy turkey gravy or lumpy gravy in general. I want to evaporate that moisture. It'll start to kind of spatter a little bit when you know that the moisture is evaporated. If there's a little bit, it's going to be okay, but generally, from a turkey or a large item, tends to get a little bit more juices developing in the bottom of the pan. So if you add that flour, you're going to create lumps in your sauce or gravy. So let's take a look at our pork roast. So again, that's looking great. My vegetables are doing good. If they start to get a little too much color, then what I'll do is I'll put a little water in the bottom of my pan. Now, in about 15 minutes, so this is going to take about 45 minutes to an hour, okay? Doesn't take that long. Very simple process, very simple work. In about 15 minutes, I'm going to add this rosemary. I have some chopped rosemary. I'm going to add some now just to show you the process, okay? And kind of let that just kind of cook on there. And then a little bit more. That's going to really start to develop some good flavor. Okay, so again, 45 minutes to an hour. Internal temperature using a thermometer. We want to shoot for 130 degrees. If you have a digital thermometer, you can actually leave it in, just the probe, not the whole thermometer, in the oven, and set your alarm. And then it's really a lot easier to gauge. Okay, so let's take a look at our gravy. So we are gearing up for our spring semester. We are following all the COVID-19 guidelines from the CDC and the Illinois Department of Public Health at the college to try to create a very safe environment for anybody who comes to the college. Temperatures, we talk about signs of symptoms to look for. We social distance at the school the best we can. We always wear masks the correct way. So we have availability for the spring semester. We would love to have you at the college to really jumpstart your career in this field. I've been doing this for 37 years. I couldn't think of anything else that I would rather do. There's so much you can do and so many different directions you can go in this field. Whether it's culinary arts, baking and pastry, restaurant management is another great field for those who may not want to work in a kitchen. That's we need as many restaurant managers as we do cooks and pastry chefs. So you can go on cruise ships, you can do research and development and food art. There's so many different directions based on what you want to do. But the main thing is that we have a passion for food, a passion for cooking, and really the reason I do this is to make people happy. Because we can make people happy and bring together people with food. It's very easy as long as you give them delicious food. Okay, so here's our gravy. All right, now, as I said, I'm going to go ahead and strain this. I want to get all that delicious gravy out of the pan. And you could see my pan, once I'll hold it up, that it's pretty clean. There isn't any more fond. The good thing is it's going to also make for easy cleanup, right? All right, because being a chef, you have to love to do dishes. Yes, you do. Sorry, that is part of the process. I will help my students wash dishes in the kitchen, in their lab. If I expect them to do it, I should be able to jump in there and help them when they need some help as well. Now, I want to try to push all that flavor. If this was going to be a clean, very kind of bright and shiny sauce, I wouldn't maybe push all this through, but all that, you can see all that coming through, that's going to give this gravy some delicious, delicious flavor. Okay, get all that from the bottom of our strainer. Now, I want to look at this. I could tell right now that it is a little thick, okay? And that's okay. You can always thin it down a little bit with some of water if you don't have any more broth, a little chicken stock. We want something that's going to be what's called a nappe consistency, where it just coats the back of a spoon. Now, you might like a gravy that's a little thicker than that, and that's fine. So I like the way that looks. You can see that beautiful shine. There's some meat particulates and vegetable particulates in that sauce. It's not a super clean sauce, but it's a delicious sauce. So now what we want to do, we're going to add a little bit of butter, about maybe a tablespoon of butter, and a little squeeze of fresh lemon juice. I'm not a big fan of bottled lemon. Now, sometimes I will add a little bit of vinegar to my sauces, but I always add some kind of acid because that is going to kind of lift up those flavors. It's going to cut through some of the richness, some of the sweetness of a sauce, and really give it a nice bright kind of spark. And that's what I'd like to see. Now, not too much lemon. You don't want it to taste like lemon. Now, at this point, you can finish this with some fresh herbs, some fresh thyme, fresh rosemary, fresh basil, fresh mint, if this was lamb, based on your product. Now, when you add butter to a sauce or a soup, you never want to just add it. We always want to stir it in, okay? There's a classical French term called monter au beurre, which is to mount with butter, and you want to stir that in. You don't want to just let it melt, because then it separates and floats to the top. All right, so my consistency looks great. I love the way that looks. Let's take a look at our pork roast again. Now, you might see where we're starting to get a little color. I'm okay with that. I love the way that looks. We're going to turn that again. If my mirepoix starts to get a little bit darker, I'll add some of that water or broth to the pan. Okay? Now, we want to taste this. See if it needs any more seasoning. Just a little more salt. Other than that, it's very delicious. Now, you see the color. You see the color of my chicken broth or stock. You get that color from the browning of your meat, the browning of that mirepoix in the oven. That's going to give you the richness and flavor that we want. Okay, so I kind of showed you how to finish it out of the oven. So we're going to let this cook until 130 degrees. We'll take it out. Then we're going to start our gravy again. Okay? I hope you enjoyed the video. I would love to see you all at the college one day pursuing a career in culinary arts at our state-of-the-art facility with some of the best instructors, I will say, at the college. So have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much.